And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from one fan's real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 63. This is the Week 7 recap episode where the Cincinnati Bengals went up north to Cleveland and took care of business against the Cleveland Browns, got win number 3 on this season, 21-14. Bengals improved their record to 3-4. Browns dropped to 1-6. Bengals season stays alive one more week, and they keep their hopes alive for the playoffs this season. So in this episode, we're going to break down everything that happened before, during, and after the game, give you all my thoughts, insights, and relive this game through my own eyes. The idea of this podcast is just to give you another fan's perspective, companion for your Bengals fandom. Sometimes, I got some friends, maybe they're busy, they can't watch the game, they got other things going on. So I want to do a little recap of the game, fill you in on everything that happened so you know everything you need to know as a Bengals fan going through this season. I'm going to keep you up to date every step of the way. If you're brand new to this podcast, you can check out episode 0. I explain more about who I am, why I'm doing the podcast. Last episode, we did a preview of this game, and we talked about how everything was setting up for a Bengals win, but I still wasn't overly confident. I felt like couldn't underestimate the Browns as an opponent, even though the Browns were coming in on a 4-game losing streak. Bengals hadn't had a lot of success in Cincinnati. Zach Taylor was winless in Cincinnati going into this game, and so was Joe Burrow, obviously. So even though everything was setting up in the Bengals' favor, including on the injury front, Bengals were getting a lot of players back healthy, so everything was looking good, but I wasn't sure. But luckily, everything worked out in the Bengals' favor right from the opening kickoff. But the big story heading into the game at the outset was Browns star running back Nick Chubb was coming back from a gruesome injury he suffered last season. This was going to be his first game playing this season, and the Browns had also basically had the worst offense in the NFL coming into this game. Their quarterback Deshaun Watson playing the worst football of his career up until this point. And as we all know, his contract of 5 years, $240 million is fully guaranteed. Every dollar is guaranteed no matter what. And he's under contract for the next 2 seasons after this. So the Browns were stuck with this guy. And all through the media leading up into this game, like the Browns beat reporters, they did the pregame shows with the Bengals. They do like a cross town, I scratch your back, you scratch mine type of deal. They go on each other's podcast. So the Browns were talking about how the fans, since the Browns had been on a 3-game road streak, away streak. This is their first home game in quite a while. So the home fans in Cleveland hadn't had a chance to see their own team and boo them. So they were expecting, if the Browns don't come out and look good and score a bunch of touchdowns and get a bunch of first downs, the fans are going to be ready to boo. And it kind of was a self-fulfilling prophecy later because the fans did boo. And I feel like part of that is just because the media whipped them up into a frenzy of this is the expectation. When you go to the game, it's not illegal to boo. It doesn't cost anything for these fans to boo. So they go to the game, get a few beers in them, and then they're frustrated about, their dog died, their wife left them, their boss at work is a pain in the ass, and boo. So who knows? They don't even know what they're booing at half the time. But they just heard some guy on the radio or on their favorite Browns podcast told them if things don't go right, start booing. So that's, it turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy, like I said. So they said fans are going to boo. That's pretty much what happened. But same thing with the Giants last week. The Browns were still in the game. They had a chance to win. So you felt like the fans were ready to boo, but they didn't quite have the opportunity to boo as much as they wanted to. They really wanted to let it all hang out, and they couldn't because the Browns still had a chance. But to kick off this game, it was not a cloud in the sky, no rain, so that was looking good again for the Bengals. And I noticed they were showing the Bengals were getting the opening kickoff. Browns won the coin toss, so they were going to kick off to the Bengals to start the game. One of the differences that I noticed on this opening kickoff was instead of having two returners back, like previously they had Chase Brown and Travion Williams, or Charlie Jones had replaced Travion Williams. They had two return guys back there on left and right side. So if the kicker kicked it to either side, the returner wouldn't have to travel that far. The other returner would come up and be a blocker for that guy. But both of them were return specialists more than blockers. This time, they only had one returner deep. It was Charlie Jones deep, and then Drew Sample, number 89, the tight end, was a little bit in front of Charlie Jones, but Charlie Jones was the only true return man in that situation. So that was a little bit of a change, because that meant Drew Sample obviously is not going to be the returner. He's just 100% lead blocking for Charlie Jones. And credit to Darren Simmons, Bengals special teams coach, and I think he's like assistant head coach or something like that, but he did a good job of designing this blocking scheme. They had a bunch of guys stacked up in the middle, and then Drew Sample led Charlie Jones up through the middle of the field, and the seas just, parted like the Red Sea, a big, huge, gaping crease right through the middle of the field where the Browns got blocked left and right and left a wide alley for Charlie Jones to run right behind Drew Sample. Drew Sample got a good block on his guy, blocked off the Browns defenders for Charlie Jones to run right by, and then the Browns kicker, Dustin Hopkins, did a terrible job, didn't even get a hand on Charlie Jones or really stop him at all. It looked like, I know he's a kicker, but he didn't look like a professional athlete at all. He looked like a 75-year-old man out there. He didn't even get a hand on him. And then, so Charlie Jones was off to the races up the right sideline. And he had, Browns are chasing him at this point. He's got a couple of Browns players have the angle on him. They're coming from the middle of the field at Charlie Jones from the hypotenuse of the angle. Charlie Jones is going up the sideline. And halfway, it looks like they're going to catch him. They're gaining on him. And it's like, okay, I know Charlie Jones is fast, but I didn't think he was fast enough to have the speed to outrun all these guys, especially considering that they're coming at him from the angle that would benefit them. So the Browns had two players, number 37 and number 38. They're running at Charlie Jones. Number 37 is first. He dives at Charlie Jones, completely misses him. He's not fast enough to catch Charlie Jones. Number 38, he's a little bit faster than 37. He takes a better angle, and it looks like he's got the angle on Charlie Jones, but he also dives and tries to hit him with a forearm to just knock him out of bounds. Kind of similar to how in that Panthers game, the guy just tried to come in and take Jamar Chase down with a shoulder and a forearm block instead of wrapping up. This guy, for the Browns, just tried to kind of put a shoulder and a forearm into Charlie Jones, assuming that he would just go out of bounds. But Charlie Jones had already come, 90 yards. At that point, they were at about the 12 or 10 yard line when this guy tried to knock Charlie Jones out and save the touchdown. But he barely got any piece of Charlie Jones on this one with his forearm, and Charlie Jones did a good job of doing a little hop step up the sideline, keeping his both feet in bounds without touching out of bounds, staying in, diving for the pylon, reaching across, and scoring the touchdown on the opening kickoff of the game. A great blocking scheme, like I said, by Darren Simmons, the special teams coordinator for the Bengals. Good job by the Bengals team blocking it. They had Jordan Battle, Muma Jong-Meta, Drew Sample, Eric All, and a bunch of those great special teamers that they've got, a lot of those rookies and second year players, young guys who are very athletic. Tyson Anderson, all those type of fast, athletic, strong guys really showed up big on this play. And this is what the Bengals always talk about. You got to get off to a fast start, play from ahead, play with the lead. Bengals are always talking about how they're built to play from ahead and, get the momentum. Oh my God. But this was a great start for the Bengals. Like, bad effort by the Browns, but that was pretty much a theme throughout the day. So it's a good play by Charlie Jones. But then, okay, I don't want to sound like a hater, but I went back and looked. I was like, I thought Charlie Jones was pretty fast, but he didn't look like he was running that fast on this play. Like, were these Browns guys so slow? So I went back and looked. Charlie Jones on this play hit a top speed of 20.05 miles per hour, which isn't really that fast considering that like Jamar Chase went 21.5 miles an hour. So Charlie Jones was 1.5 miles an hour slower than Jamar Chase. And Joe Burrow on his touchdown run last week against the Giants went 19.8 miles an hour. So Charlie Jones was only 0.25 miles per hour faster than Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow could have returned this kick for a touchdown pretty much. So it was weird. And you could hear on the TV broadcast, Adam Archuleta, when Charlie Jones got to about the 30-yard line, he just goes, no way. Like, he didn't even believe what was happening. I couldn't believe it. I was like, is Charlie Jones really going to score a touchdown on the Browns right now? But the Browns just let it. I think the Browns, maybe they didn't warm up before the game or something. Like, maybe they didn't really, they were a little bit cold at the opening kickoff. They weren't ready. But Charlie Jones was ready. And also, bad job, just Browns special teams in general. But Dustin Hopkins, the kicker, bad kick because he should have kicked it, through the end zone or not straight down the middle of the field. It was like a perfectly returnable kick. It was, at the middle of the field, so Charlie Jones didn't have to run to either side, make it, difficult for him at all. I don't know what was the deal with the wind. Maybe they're kicking into the wind or something, but Dustin Hopkins, terrible day. We'll get to that later. But this is a great start, like I said, by the Bengals. Got off to that. That went back to the Browns. And the Bengals' defense, like I said, they got all their good players or their defensive linemen back for this game. So this was an especially good game for Trey Hendrickson. He was dominating as he has been. But for the Browns, on their first couple drives, they came out, first drive, 5 plays, 9 yards, punt. First play, Nick Chubb released late out of the backfield, and Deshaun Watson just threw it too hard. Nick Chubb was only standing at like 10 feet away from him, threw it way too hard, went off Nick Chubb's hands, popped up in the air. It was lucky for the Browns that the Bengals didn't intercept it. But there's a lot of situations like that where the quarterbacks for the Browns were just throwing it too hard at the receivers when they were too close and they weren't able to catch it. Bengals, after that, they got the punt. Charlie Jones only returned 1 yard. And I was surprised they put Charlie Jones back to return the punt because he had just returned the kickoff 100 yards. Not only, it seemed like just a couple minutes before this, the Browns' drive only lasted for 5 plays and then they punted. So then Charlie Jones has to come back out on the field and return another punt. He looked like he was a little bit tired on this return, so he didn't go anywhere. Bengals, they didn't do anything much on their drive. They basically went 3 and out, punted, and gave it back to the Browns. Browns had a 10-play, 32-yard drive, picked up a few first downs, mostly on short passes over the middle. David Njoku, Jordan Akins caught a couple passes, but they had to settle for a field goal from Dustin Hopkins from 49 yards. Not a short field goal, but not especially long either. It was 4th and 4 from the Bengals' 31-yard line, and they ended up missing the field goal. Dustin Hopkins. So that would have, it was 7-0 Bengals at that point. Midway through the first quarter, that would have at least got the Browns on the scoreboard, but instead, Bengals keep the shutout going. Unfortunately, the Bengals take over at their own 39-yard line, drive it 29 yards. They get one deep pass over the middle to T. Higgins for 17 yards, but then Cordell Volson gets called for a holding penalty. Seems like Cordell Volson has been good for about one holding penalty per game at least. That's something he'll have to clean up, but he's just not very athletic, and so he gets in these situations where guys are getting away from him and he's not fast enough or quick enough to stop them by moving his feet, so he has to grab them and hold them with his hands. He's usually getting called for it seems like. But Bengals, they had the ball at the Cleveland 37-yard line, 4th and 3. That would have been about a over 50-yard field goal for Evan McPherson. Again, I don't know what the wind, they didn't show, like the flags in the stadium didn't look like there was a ton of wind blowing in either direction. For whatever reason, Zach Taylor decided not to go for the, I want to say 54-yard field goal at that point. Went for it on 4th and 3, and Joe Burrow got sacked. The protection just kind of broke down up the middle. I don't know where it came from exactly. It seemed like maybe over Ted Karras, Volson, Kappa. It seemed like the tackles held up for the most part. Amarius Mims, he and Orlando Brown Jr. had a great challenge taking on Myles Garrett, number 95 for the Browns. There's a couple plays I saw Myles Garrett going up against Amarius Mims early in this game, and he bent but didn't break, let's say. Like he got bent backwards for sure, but he didn't give up a sack at least. So good job. It was a welcome to the NFL moment for Amarius Mims for sure. But on that 4th down, Joe Burrow got sacked. Joe Burrow got sacked a few times in this game, but that gave the ball back to the Browns. Bengals were still up 7-0 at that point. Browns didn't do much of anything. They took a sack. This was a Trey Hendrickson sack on 3rd and 4 to stop the Browns for a 3-and-out, and they forcing another punt back to Charlie Jones. That was fair caught to end the first quarter. Bengals were up 7-0 after the first quarter, and one of the things they were highlighting on CBS, Adam Archuleta, the announcer, color analyst for CBS, was highlighting how the Browns had open receivers that Deshaun Watson, the Browns quarterback, just wasn't throwing the ball to for whatever reason. He wasn't seeing them, wasn't seeing the field. And when you're watching on TV, you can't see all the receivers down the field because the camera angle usually just kind of zooms in pretty tight. So you just see the quarterback holding the ball, you see the offensive line blocking, but you can't see down the field who's open and who's not. So later on the replay, they were showing these guys, they had like a graphic of here's this guy running wide open down the field and Deshaun Watson doesn't throw the ball to him. Here's a different play. Guy running wide open down the field. Deshaun Watson doesn't throw it to him. So they were just really highlighting how many missed opportunities were out there for the Browns offense that they were not taking advantage of. And they were really emphasizing the ineptitude and the struggles of the Browns offense because they were putting up graphics that would show, Browns offense last in the league in all these different categories. And then they would have them in bright red highlighted. So it's extra bad if it's in red. If it was good, it'd be green. But since it's bad, they put it in red. And it's, 3rd down efficiency, 32nd out of 32 teams in the league. Last at this. So it felt like, they're really kind of piling on the Browns and saying, oh, isn't it, just ridiculous how bad the Browns are. But, the Browns punted, and I think there were a few boos here and there. But still, I think that definitely when they missed the field goal, there were some boos. But still, it's a 7-0 game at that point. Can't get too negative. So then this kicked off a series of punts where neither team could really do much of anything on offense. For the Bengals, they would get a few first downs, but then they had an incomplete pass. Just couldn't pick up much of anything on the ground game either. That was part of the issue, was Their longest run was 22 yards by Chase Brown. But outside of that, Zach Moss couldn't get anything going on the ground. If we look at the box score real quick here, Zach Moss, 6 carries for 7 yards, 1.2 average. Chase Brown did a little bit better, 15 carries for 44 yards, 2.9 yards per carry, along with 22. So as a team, Jamar Chase had 1 carry for 11 yards. Joe Burrow had a few carries, but he got negative yards, not counting the sacks. So as a team, the Bengals had 25 rushing carries for 59 yards, 2.4 yards per carry. Not very effective. So that was a big reason why Bengals weren't able to have much success, especially in the first half. But we know the Browns defense is a very formidable defense. They maybe haven't put up the impressive statistics like they had last season, but Myles Garrett, even though he's a little bit injured, he has been playing very well and effectively. But in this game, he didn't have any sacks. He had a few pressures, but he didn't really have a dominant. This is the first game, maybe in his career, that he didn't have a sack against the Bengals. So Myles Garrett, the Bengals did a good job of double teaming him on every play. And I don't know why they couldn't figure that out before, but I think part of it was they didn't have the personnel. So Bengals this season have run a lot more 2 tight end sets using Drew Sample, and Eric All has really been a great draft pick. So good in the run game, pass blocking. He did have a drop on his only target in this game, but other than that, great job by Eric All, Drew Sample. Didn't hear a lot from the other receiving tight ends like Mike Gesicki and Tanner Hudson, but just the fact that they've got more of those guys on the field, they're trying to help out the Bengals offensive line, and so that's leading to fewer sacks. Joe Burrow is still getting sacked. He had 3 sacks for 17 yards, but less sacks, less hits on Joe Burrow than we've seen against the Browns in recent years. The other thing about the Browns that's so good on defense is their coverage. Browns had good coverage in this game. There was a pass up the right sideline. Joe Burrow tried to throw to Andre Yosivach, number 80, where Denzel Ward did a good job of going up, high pointing the ball, and stripping the ball out of Andre's hands before he could complete the catch. So Browns are known for their coverage. They were doing a good job in that regard. But the Bengals didn't test the Browns deep. It was mostly underneath, short passes, and the same thing with the Browns. So it was a very similar battle of offenses that couldn't really get much going in the first half. Finally, in the final drive of the final drive of the first half for the Browns, they got a little bit going. They were able to start moving the ball. It was actually a 15-play drive that went 61 yards, starting from their own 22-yard line after a Ryan Rico punt. And all this punts going back and forth. The Bengals punter, Ryan Rico, didn't have a great day punting. He was, again, I don't know if there was wind as a factor or what, but instead of his typical high rainbow, like high hang time kicks, he was having a lot of like low line drive, wobbly looking kicks that would bounce. And sometimes it would work out. They would bounce and roll for extra yardage, but a lot of time the returner was catching it and picking up return yards, which isn't typical for Ryan Rico. So I don't know. They showed him on some of his, after one of his punts, he was like really frustrated and like screaming at himself. He didn't think it was a good punt. So I don't know what was up with that. Hopefully that was just kind of a bad game for Ryan Rico in the punting game. But Browns, last drive of the second quarter, they get it going, 15 plays. They're starting to hit some passes. Browns fans are starting to come to life a little bit. They're cheering. Things are looking good. Then all of a sudden, Deshaun Watson, the quarterback, catches the snap. It looks like he's going to take off and do a quarterback sneak, not unlike Joe Burrow did against the Giants when he scored that touchdown Looked like Deshaun Watson wanted to take off through the line up the right side, and he had space. He had a lot of open space, nobody in front of him around to make the tackle. But before he could even take really more than one step, he just, as soon as he planted, he fell, crumpled on the ground, and started grabbing at his leg immediately. And you could just tell by the way he reacted, the way everybody else reacted. It was a serious injury, non-contact injury. And those are, like they said in the Panthers game, that can be always the most serious. Not, when you have an injury where nobody even makes contact with you and all of a sudden the guy is just like limping and falling on the ground, usually not a good sign. And that was the case in this one. And you see the replay, it's very difficult to watch, but you can see his leg just kind of pop and buckle. It was his Achilles tendon rupturing on that play. He's going to be out for the rest of the season. Obviously going to have surgery and have rehab and everything that goes along with that. We've seen, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, quarterbacks have come back from that injury, and Deshaun Watson is younger than Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. So in theory, he could come back and continue playing. But he had, like we talked about, he was playing one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL up until that point. And there was some mixed reactions from the fans, let's call it. It was weird. Some of them cheered when he went down injured. Some of them booed. It was a weird mix of noise and uneasiness. And, obviously in that situation, everybody knows he's injured. And he's a conflicting person in the public eye. He's had a lot of controversy because he's continued to have civil lawsuits filed against him for weird sexually deviant abuse or whatever you want to call it towards other people, that just weird. So there's already, that going against him. When you add on top of it that he's not playing well on the football field, it's a complicated issue. But, obviously as a human being, I don't care how many beers you have, you shouldn't be like cheering or booing really, unless it's, like doing the polite clap out of respect as the guy's going off the field on a cart. He's got a towel over his head. He's probably emotional at that point. So there was some discussion, LeBron and other notable celebrities put out statements that it was kind of embarrassing for the Browns fans to be having that kind of reaction when their quarterback is injured on the field. But what would you expect out of Browns fans? There was one moment in the game where obviously these people were drunk. They come back. This is why you don't show fans in the stands. I was talking about last podcast about how they didn't show any of the Giants fans in the game in the stadium, and that was kind of weird because you didn't get any sense of the atmosphere. Well, you got some sense of the atmosphere for the dog pound. They were showing the dog pound coming back from the commercial. All of a sudden, these two 45-year-old fat people just start making out right in front of the camera, they're on a plane that's going down, and this is their last 15 seconds to be alive. These people are going at it. It's like, oh my God, the Browns. This is what you get out of the Browns fan base. So just as unsatisfying as parts of this game were to watch, it's always satisfying to beat the Browns and their stupid fan base. So that's at least a positive we could take out of this. But in this moment, it was a very negative that turned into a very positive moment for the Browns and for football fans in general, admittedly, because after they scraped Deshaun Watson up off the turf, put him on the meat wagon, hauled him out of there with his torn Achilles, they put in the second-year player, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who had been elevated to backup quarterback instead of Jameis Winston for this week. He went in, and his first pass he threw was in the corner of the end zone at DJ Turner, Bengals cornerback. I forget who the receiver was on that play, but I guess I could go back and look, but what fun would that be? Cedric Tillman. So he's throwing to Cedric Tillman in a deep right. Defensive pass interference penalty on DJ Turner. Again, second time where DJ Turner has got defensive pass interference in the end zone, which gives the other team the ball at their 1 yard line. So first and goal from the Bengals 1 yard line. But so it looks like the Browns have a touchdown up the middle, but it gets called because of a penalty, a weird penalty. They said that the Browns offensive lineman lined up offside in the neutral zone, but they showed the replay of it, and he looked like he was in line with everybody else. We never saw a replay that showed exactly where or how he was lined up offsides, and I don't know that I've seen that called very often on the offense, lined up offsides on a goal line play. So that was a weird penalty that knocked the touchdown off the board for the Browns. But a couple plays later, they got a 5-yard run from Nick Chubb that got all that penalty yardage back on first and goal from the 6. Incomplete pass, and then they had another run for no gain on 3rd and 1. So that brought up a 4th and 1 at the Bengals 1 yard line, 4th and goal. And there's a minute left to go in the half. Browns are able to run a toss sweep to the left with Nick Chubb. He gets a good block on the outside on Akeem Davis-Gaither from his tight end, and nobody's there to stop him. I think maybe one of the linebackers tried to make a saving tackle at the goal line, but he did a nice spin move to get in the end zone for a touchdown. So Nick Chubb, in his first game back from horrible injury, gets the touchdown that looks like it would tie the game for the Browns. So at this point, Browns fans who had either been cheering for the injury or booing or didn't know how to feel, huge negative suddenly turned into a huge positive for the Browns. But then all of a sudden, Dustin Hopkins misses the extra point. It looked like a good snap, good hold, just completely shanks the kick and misses it. So Dustin Hopkins doesn't stop Charlie Jones and prevent the touchdown on the kickoff, then misses the extra point. Bengals get the ball back with a little bit of time, but they're not able to do anything with it before halftime. So that brings it to the half. Bengals have a 7-6 lead. So it's good in the sense that they've got the lead technically, but it's by 1 point. And also the Bengals offense had not been able to do much of anything at that point in the game. The only points they scored was on the opening kickoff from Charlie Jones. So at that point, it was weird because if Deshaun Watson had not gotten hurt, hypothetically, if Deshaun Watson did not get hurt, and the Browns went in, scored the touchdown, and then let's say hypothetically they didn't miss the extra point, and so if it had been 7-7 tie game and Deshaun Watson was still healthy, at that moment, I would have felt like the Browns had a better chance to win the game because their offense had put points on the board and they got the ball to start the second half. So it just felt like maybe the Browns offense was going to be a little bit more effective than the Bengals offense. But since Deshaun Watson was injured, that totally changed the complexion of the game and the trajectory of the game because obviously backup quarterbacks coming in. He didn't look great when we saw him. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, when he played last season, he got 4 starts and played in about half their games. He looked okay at times, but there were a lot of times where he really looked like a rookie, a bad rookie, not very good. And they ended up having to go to Joe Flacco toward the end of the season, and that's how they ended up making it into the playoffs with Joe Flacco. For whatever reason, the Browns decided not to even offer Joe Flacco a contract in the offseason. They brought in Jameis Winston, who was the third-string quarterback, but he was the emergency quarterback. So even if they wanted to, I think the rules stipulate that they're not allowed to play the third-string emergency quarterback unless the second quarterback is also injured. So this meant that the rest of the game, Dorian Thompson-Robinson was going to be playing for the Browns. On their first drive of the second half, they started off with a good start. Dorian Thompson-Robinson completed a pass and then picked up a long run for another first down where he showed off a lot of speed and 34-yard run around the right side where as a quarterback keeper, zone read, he faked it to the running back and then kept the ball to the right side. And Sam Hubbard got completely faked out on this play. He bit on the running back dive, and even after the quarterback ran right past him, Sam Hubbard was still chasing the guy without the ball. So a huge breakdown. Nobody else was there to stop him. He got some good blocks going up the right sideline. But this drive ended up stalling out where they were on the Bengals 35-yard line again, 4th and 2, and fell incomplete. A good pass breakup. It was intended for Nick Chubb, but good pass breakup. But you felt like in that situation, again, it wouldn't have been an extremely long field goal try. They were at the 35-yard line. So it would have been about a 53-yard field goal attempt. But again, Dustin Hopkins missed a 49-yarder, a shorter kick earlier in the first half, missed the extra point, didn't have an especially great kickoff. And Aditi Kinkhabwala asked Kevin Stefanski, the Browns head coach, around halftime during the interview, I think it was before halftime, she asked, is there anything wrong with the kicker? Or she said, is there anything we need to know about him? Like, basically, like, is he injured or is there something wrong? It's basically like, why is he missing all these kicks? But he was like, no, everything's fine with him. He's cool. Yeah, totally cool. Just like when Deshaun Watson was playing terrible at quarterback and they were asking, like, why is he still playing? How come you haven't benched him yet? No, he's fine. Everything's cool. So, hey, good for the Bengals, but they obviously didn't have confidence in their kicker at that point. So that's why they went for it on 4th and 2 and didn't get it. So that was great for the Bengals. Gave them the ball back, and Bengals ended up converting this into a touchdown. A couple big plays. This was where they got a big play from Chase Brown off the right side for a 22-yard run. When Chase Brown hits that hole, he hits it with a full head of steam and is able to pick up a lot of yards. And then it's such an extreme contrast. Chase Brown, 22-yard run. Zach Moss subs in for Chase Brown right after that, picks up 1 yard on first down. So you get 1st and 10, 22 yards, and then they bring in Zach Moss, 1 yard. So extreme opposites. But then, very next play, Zach Moss redeems himself with a 19-yard catch out of the backfield. So maybe not effective as a runner in this game, but Zach Moss was able to contribute in the passing game. There's another offside penalty on Myles Garrett that gave the Bengals a free 5 yards. But then the big play on this drive, Bengals had it 2nd and 5 from the Browns' 18-yard line. Jamar Chase had one-on-one, I think it was Martin Emerson on the left side, and he's just too good. One-on-one, Joe Burrow threw a nice, basically a fade ball, maybe something like a back shoulder fade to Jamar Chase, but Jamar Chase did a good job of reacting to it late, catching it. It was a perfect pass from Joe Burrow to the corner of the pylon. Jamar Chase caught it with his feet in bounds. Touchdown. Bengals kick the extra point to go up 14-6 at that point. Browns take over. Middle of the third quarter, they run a few plays, and then there's a weird play where Dorian Thompson-Robinson throws it over the middle, and there's 2 Browns players basically within 5 feet of each other. One guy is crossing in front of the other guy, and there's a miscommunication or confusion about who the quarterback was throwing it to. So the Browns player in front, for some reason, stuck out one hand and deflected the ball straight up in the air. So now, it's a free-for-all for anybody to grab it. And for some reason, Sam Hubbard, the defensive lineman for the Bengals, was dropping back into coverage. So Lou Anarumo had some kind of a defensive scheme going on where he's got his linebackers blitzing and his linemen dropping out into coverage and all kinds of crazy stuff. So Sam Hubbard was going back, and he just happened to be right place at the right time to catch this ball just falling out of the sky for the interception. So that gives the ball back to the Bengals in great territory at the 43-yard line. But unfortunately, they're not able to do anything with it. They get a 2-yard run, an incomplete pass to Eric All that he dropped on 2nd and 8, and then another Zach Moss 1-yard run on 3rd and 8. So very conservative at this point from Zach Taylor. They got an 8-point lead. They're up 14-6, and that's like 100 points in Zach Taylor's mind. So he doesn't want to do anything risky. After they got 2 touchdowns on the board, whoa, let's just play conservative and punt it away from the Browns' 40-yard line. So it would have been like a 58-yard kick for Evan McPherson. I get it. You don't need to try that. And they were able to pin the Browns at the 11-yard line. So decent field position. And the Browns quarterback is not looking great at this point either. So I guess the Bengals are feeling confident that their defense is going to be able to stop the Browns. And they do. On the next drive, Cleveland has to go 6 plays, only get 14 yards, and punt. A couple incomplete passes there from Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He was just not on the same page with his receivers a lot of the time. That gave the Bengals the ball back, and there was a good return on the punt from Charlie Jones. He got it's a 9-yard return, but then there was a 15-yard penalty on top of this. So I take that back. There was a good punt return in here in the game from Charlie Jones for about 23 yards on one play. That might have been the first half. But 15-yard penalty, lowering the head to make forcible contact. So, I remember there was a guy, he came in late on Charlie Jones and basically just speared him with his helmet in the back of Charlie Jones' head. Looked like Charlie Jones took a blow to the back of his head, got up a little bit woozy. I was surprised they didn't check him out for a concussion, honestly, because that's the kind of play, obviously, since why it's a penalty, because guys can get hurt like that. So, dumb penalty from the Browns, put the Bengals in great field position. Instead of having it at their own 35, they get it at the 50-yard line, and they pick up a 19-yard pass to T. Higgins. They get stopped, lose yards on a Chase Brown, -3 yards on a run. They pick up 9 yards on a pass to Jamar Chase on the right sideline, where it looked like it was going to be, I think this is the play, where it looked like it was going to be maybe a 1 or 2 yard gain. But all of a sudden, Jamar Chase was so strong, he put like 3 Browns defenders on his back and just carried them for an extra 6 or 7 yards. It was crazy. Like a normal play, like Andre Iosivas would have been tackled for a 2-yard gain at the most. But for somehow Jamar Chase was just so strong, he's able to bulldoze these guys for an extra, almost pick up the first down. Doesn't quite get it. But Bengals get 3rd and 4 from the Browns' 25-yard line. And T. Higgins looked like he was playing out of the slot on this play, on the slot out of the left. Maybe the Browns had a little bit of a blitz look, but they didn't have safety help. T. Higgins had one-on-one on a slant route. He beat his man. Joe Burrow gave him a nice pass out in front. He caught it, and then the guy for the Browns missed the tackle. So Bengals already got the first down, but then to make matters even worse, Browns defender missed the tackle on T. Higgins. It's not like T. Higgins is easy to tackle. T. Higgins is, 6'5", 215 pounds or whatever he is. So he's a hard guy to bring down. I'll give him that. But poor tackling by the Browns gives the Bengals another touchdown. They go up 21-6 at this point. And so the fourth quarter is about to start. Bengals have a 2-touchdown lead. Things are looking pretty good, especially because the Browns offense continues to look bad with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. They get another drive that ends with no yards gained and a punt back to the Bengals. Both teams continue to trade more punts. Like I said, Zach Taylor's really content at this point with a 15-point lead, and they're in the fourth quarter. All he wants to do is just run the clock out, keep the ball in bounds, so no incomplete passes, nobody run out of bounds, just stay in bounds, bleed the clock is what they're essentially trying to do. So they did some short passes, some short runs, but didn't really do much of anything besides take time off the clock, shorten the game. They were mostly successful at doing that, but then towards the end of the game, it was more like garbage time anyway, but the Browns were trying to come back, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson threw a pass that got intercepted by Geno Stone, Bengals safety, number 22. His first interception as a Bengal. He led the league in interceptions last season, but it took him all the way until week 7 to get one as a Bengal. He ran it back, got the Bengals set up in good field position, and then on the tackle, Browns quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson injured his finger So he was out of the game after this. So bad play for the Browns. Interception, and the quarterback injures his finger. And it was a weird play. When they showed it on replay, the receiver for the Browns, that was the intended receiver, Elijah Moore, he wasn't even looking back for the pass. He didn't even know that the ball was heading in his direction and didn't react at all. So they were explaining that he was probably running a clear out route where he would go deep to clear out space for the guy coming behind him underneath on the in-breaking route, which makes sense. And normally you wouldn't expect the ball to be thrown to you. You would expect it to be thrown to the guy coming behind you since you're clearing it out. But they showed Elijah Moore. He was just looking at the scoreboard, the video screen, watching the video to see where the ball was being thrown to. But there was no defenders. He wasn't clearing anybody out. He was just running in a straight line in the middle of nowhere. So he wasn't really doing anything. Like, he wasn't blocking. Like, even if the guy behind him caught the pass, let's say, okay, then what are you doing? You're all the way down the field not doing anything. So it was a weird decision from the quarterback to throw it to him. Weird decision by Elijah Moore to not even look and turn around to see what was going on. But Bengals just stepped in front of the pass that nobody else wanted to catch, apparently, for the Browns. Ran it back for the touch, or for an interception. So good job by the Bengals. Bad job by the Browns. And so Bengals had it in good field position. They somehow lost yards, didn't pick up any yards. They had a negative 3-yard run, a run for no gain by Chase Brown, and a 1-yard run for Chase Brown. Myles Garrett was making all the tackles, basically. He was just stopping the Bengals single-handedly, it seemed like. So Bengals settled for a 50-yard Evan McPherson field goal, which he missed, of course, because why not? You don't want to win the game, seal it up with 4 minutes left to go. Let's leave the door cracked open for the Browns just a little bit. So that's what they did. Gave it back to the Browns. And at this point, Jameis Winston, the third-string emergency quarterback, was in the game for the Browns. And Bengals were in, kind of a prevent, soft coverage defense. But still, Jameis led the Browns on a 14-play, 65-yard drive where they scored a touchdown and converted the 2-point conversion to get it to 21-14, back from 21-6. And Jameis was hitting passes. He looked crisp. He was on time with his receivers. He looked like a real NFL quarterback. And, I shouldn't be surprised. This is Jameis' 10th year in the NFL at this point. He was the number 1 overall pick in the draft for a reason. He's obviously a lot better than Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but I think the Browns just maybe wanted to give him that Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I would say DTR. They wanted to give DTR a chance because he was a second-round pick last year, and he's a lot younger, obviously, than Jameis. But I think at this point, if I was the Browns coach, just based on this one drive from Jameis and what they saw out of DTR, I would go with Jameis for the rest of their games because Deshaun Watson is obviously not going to come back. And I think they picked up Bailey Zappi off of somebody's practice squad to be their third quarterback. The Browns did. So Browns will have decisions to make. As a Bengals fan, I don't really care. It's just good that the Browns decided to use DTR as their backup quarterback against the Bengals instead of Jameis. Because again, if Jameis Winston had played for the entire second half, the Browns might have had a chance to win this game. He probably wouldn't have. Well, I can't say he wouldn't have thrown 2 interceptions like DTR. Jameis throws interceptions too, but he looked like a real NFL quarterback as opposed to DTR. So Bengals got fortunate in this game. And after the game, so one thing to note here was there were a couple critical injuries I forgot to mention. Orlando Brown Jr., Bengals left tackle, went down in the second half limping, came out, and he was standing on the sidelines for the rest of the game. He left his pads on, but he didn't have his helmet on. He had an earpiece in, so he was standing around. He obviously wasn't coming back. And then at the end of the game, when Jameis Winston was driving for the touchdown, Bengals had their 2 safeties collide, trying to break up a pass. Geno Stone and Von Bell ran into each other, knocked knees and legs into each other, and it looked like both of them were down. And then they brought out an air cast and carted Geno Stone off the field. And on the replay, it looked like his leg bent at an awkward angle, And so I was assuming the worst because we've seen so many lower leg injuries where players have broken their tibia and or fibulas, and we've seen that too many times. A number of times this week, a couple times last week. So the NFL is trying to, do what they can to make the game safe. I know, by making these hip drop penalties or hip drop tackles penalties and giving fines and things like that. But just the nature of having to tackle guys down to the ground, there's going to be these type of people around your legs, around your ankles, around your knees, around your shins. So tough to see. But so it was looking immediately like Geno Stone was going to be out the rest of the season. Looked like broken leg for sure. He's not coming back. He's going to be out, and Jordan Battle is going to be playing for the rest of the season. But fortunately, after the game, they said that both those guys should be, on a positive direction. And Geno Stone, it looked like X-rays came back negative, nothing fractured, just a contusion. So he's going to be sore. He's going to be in pain, but he should be able to play in the upcoming game next week. So my immediate reaction after the game was more negative than it probably would have been, just because I thought, oh man, they won the game, but Geno Stone is going to be out for the rest of the year. That's not going to be good. So knowing that Geno Stone injury isn't that bad puts a little bit different spin on this win. The Bengals, the season is back on track, and they avoided any serious injuries. So I felt more positive in a little bit of time away from the game, knowing that the players aren't seriously injured. And hopefully the same for Orlando Brown. They said Zach Taylor was a little bit less optimistic about Orlando Brown, about whether he's going to be able to play this week. He said, we'll just take it day to day, see how it goes. They haven't said exactly what that injury is. Sounds like maybe it's his knee or something like that, or a calf strain. I'm not sure what it was. Something in his leg. But Cody Ford, who filled in at him as their backup tackle at left tackle, played well. He got some help from the tight ends and running backs, but it wasn't a disaster. We didn't say, oh man, Cody Ford got totally steamrolled and Cody Ford holding penalty or anything like that. So he's a big guy. He's not able to move as well as Orlando Brown, but he's able to hold his own. So hopefully if he does have to come in and play a significant amount of time, there won't be too much of a drop-off. But it will be somewhat of a drop-off because Orlando Brown was playing maybe the best season of his career up until this point, and he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. So it was looking like he was on a track for another Pro Bowl season if he could stay healthy. So if you're, take a Pro Bowl player out of your lineup, it's obviously going to be a dip. But they asked about Amarius Mims, if he would switch to left tackle. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Amarius is going to stay at right tackle. They may have Cody Ford go into left tackle if necessary. But we'll see later in the week whether the team is having him practice throughout the week and see how he looks getting closer to this game. But just wrapping up this game against the Browns. It's the Bengals' first win in the AFC this season. First win against an AFC North opponent. So it's a huge game. They're going to have to keep it going next week. But this was, like I said, Zach Taylor's first win. He didn't know what to say or how to react. He never won in Cleveland before. So it wasn't a pretty win. It was kind of an ugly win. The offense kind of got off to a slow start in the first half, especially. They only had points from Charlie Jones. And we'll have to see. Maybe teams won't kick it to Charlie Jones anymore. They'd be scared. They'd be like, oh, snap, we can't kick it to this guy running 20 miles an hour. He's too fast. I don't know. The Browns, those guys, they're going to have to cut those guys and get some new guys, because you can't be getting outrun by a guy running 20 miles an hour in the NFL. That's not that fast. But anyway, yeah, we felt good after this one. We'll take them. This is 2 in a row. So the Bengals are on a streak. 2 games is a streak. And it's the only thing that maybe makes you feel a little bit less good about this win is all the Bengals wins have come against the worst teams in the NFL. They haven't got a quality win, what you would say. Like, they haven't beaten anybody good, basically. All the teams they beat have been all the worst teams. So, like, the Panthers, they just got beat like 40-7 by the Commanders. The Giants, who the Bengals just beat last week, They just got beat by the Eagles 28-3, and the Eagles are the Bengals' next opponent. And then you look at the Patriots, who actually beat the Bengals in week 1. They haven't won a game since. Patriots lost to the Jaguars, that was also their second win of the season. Patriots are on a 6-game losing streak. Their only win was the first week of the season against the Bengals, which was without T. Higgins, was without a lot of guys on defense, admittedly. But still, the fact that they lost to one of the worst teams in the NFL, and the fact that their only wins have been against some of the worst teams in the NFL, need to start getting some wins against some better opponents. So this test against the Eagles, somehow the Bengals are favored right now in this game. It's a home game against the Eagles, but they're favored by like 1.5 to 2.5 points. Let's call it 2 points right now at home against the Eagles, which is a surprise to me because the Eagles have a better record than the Bengals, and they just beat the Giants by a greater margin of victory than the Bengals did. Bengals won 17-7 against the Giants. Eagles just beat them 28-3. So I don't know, but that'll be an interesting game to preview as we get closer to game time later this week. But if you've listened all this way through the podcast, I appreciate it. There's so many other Bengals podcasts out there you could have listened to instead, but you, for some reason, decided to pick this one. So thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, rating, all that kind of stuff, so I know that I'm not speaking to myself. Leave me an email at bengalbitespodcast@gmail.com if you have anything to make the show better. So far, the only emails I've gotten have been from sales and marketing people telling me how they want to advertise my podcast with AI. So if you are an AI, I am not interested in advance. Thank you. But on the next episode, we'll preview this Eagles game. So until next time, I'm going to leave you with a hoo day and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.